Welcome to tonight's LensCAST podcast.
Today we are welcoming Adele and Max Warner-Tate, who make a formidable partnership. Based in Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, they've recently made it their home and they offer photography tuition and the opportunity to have a photo buddy while on location in the Isles, which, by the way, I think is a cracking idea. Inspired by holidays that they took in Scotland over the years, they finally took the step to relocate there permanently, leaving behind the security of their careers and all the benefits that brings to seek a lifestyle of creativity, reward and fulfillment. Now, Adele has a particular passion for seascape and coastal photography, where capturing the power of those crushing waves, all the patterns and shapes and simplicity in sand quieter scenes captures her heart. Max favours far more the videography side and utilising her drone so that she can see the world differently, discovering new and interesting vistas. Taking the desire to explore from different perspectives further, she's invested in an underwater camera and is really enjoying the new challenge that this presents. Adele and Max share the creative journey through the YouTube channel and chew the cud with others in their podcast. They share their passion for like-minded females through their Instagram communities, which I'm sure we'll probably hear a little bit more about tonight. In recent years, their work has earned them accolades in the Scottish Landscape Photographer of the Year, and this year, second place in the Sea and Coast category in the Scottish Nature Photography Awards, as well as basically wiping the floor with everybody else and having 4 other images shortlisted. They also presented, not that I'm jealous at all, at the photography show in London this year. How they've got time to do anything else, I will never work it out. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are very much looking forward to probing your creative minds over the course of the next hour. I would like to start off with a question. Talk us through your approach to your philosophy to your photography.
Firstly, thanks so much for asking us to go on the podcast. It's lovely to sort of chat through with you today. So thanks so much. So philosophy or approach, we sort of pondered over it a little bit because I think it's changed massively. I think when I first started getting into photography around 10 years ago, we would plan our photography outings within an inch of their lives, around work, commitments, travel, the weather, and we would sort of probably plan a year in advance, like, booking holidays and weekends away. Probably a little bit easier when we had our camper van. Because, you could just hop in and sort of head away for the weekend pretty much. But I think it's changed. I think now we feel much freer sort of being right by the coast and being able to sort of react to the conditions as opposed to plan for the conditions makes a massive difference. So we're a minute and a half literally to our nearest beach in the car. So, when looking out of the window and you can see sort of the weather coming in across the coast, you can see if there's a gap on the horizon. You can sort of see what the conditions are doing and being able to react and just jump in the car and head out is it's a massive bonus. So I think it's changed, that sort of rather than planning, it's now reacting.
Mm.
And we just get in the car and go out anyway, whatever the weather's doing, basically. So it's, I think that's probably how it's changed, and probably the current approach.
You had some cracking conditions, didn't you?
Yeah, it's having that. I think it's having that year last year to sort of figure out where the best locations are to go, and then revisiting them in different conditions is a huge bonus. So, when you get the weather coming through, the winds and whatnot, you know where to go, and it's more just being out there, I think, as opposed to checking every single weather app, which I've probably got 10 of, if not more, on my phone, and sort of planning where you can take time off and things like that. So we're so much freer with not being restricted by jobs as such. I do still work. I've got a little part-time 3-day week job. So we've pretty much got 4 days a week.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And the evenings where we can head out.
Not just 4 days a week, you've got 4 days a week in that place.
Absolutely.
that tagline that you have, like loving life. Is it loving life in the Hebrides?
Yeah. That's your
living life in the Hebrides. That's the one. Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to go, shut up.
I know.
So jealous.
It was a reason for the move, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because before we was here, we was in Aberdeenshire, and that came up through work, through Max's work. But it was almost a gateway to sort of a midway point to where we wanted to be, sort of thing. So discovering here was almost like the final step in, this is how we've wanted to shape our lives, basically, and this is where we want to be. So it's sort of that final part of a huge a huge journey, I suppose.
Well, I'm gonna pass over to Paul to do the first image of the evening.
So guys, looking onto the first image, and there's a lot of scale in this image of the person. I gather that's yourself with the drone, is that correct?
No, that's Adele with a camera just about to get a feed.
Really?
Yeah. That's Adele down.
You know what I love about this? And it's not so much as just about the scale of the image, it's the detail in these waves. I love drone shots because drone shots, it's a whole different perspective. And just taking the shot, what's the aspects you look for in an image?
I think for me, I used to just do the videography, or just used to record on the drone. I didn't always take photographs, and then one day I saw something very similar to that, where you've got the waves breaking. I think the line on that one between sort of where Adele stood, with the waves looking as crazy as they are, with the calmness then of the sand to the left, there was just something about that image and that moment in time that I wanted to try and capture. And from that day on, I now take a lot more drone images rather than just the footage. But that's my favourite drone image.
And do you feel this image can inspire you to take more drone shots?
I quite like to do the videography, as you said earlier.
Of course.
And didn't really do many photographs, full stop. I mean, even at the moment now, using the big girl 750, Adele's old camera, which I would not have done before. Still getting used to that one a little bit. But sort of enjoying a bit of ground level photography as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
But I think the drone will always be anything to do with the drone will always be my favourite. And the underwater camera.
It's the detail in these waves, what I loved about the shot. It just looks really detailed, and it makes your eyes want to just look right around the image itself. Beautiful shot.
I think the light as well on right from the sort of top left through the image is fantastic. I mean, those waves were quite, as you can see there, quite choppy. The fact Adele is where she was, Adele got absolutely drenched taking her photograph from where she was, because it was quite a force to those waves. Well, as you can tell by the movement and everything else. But I think the way the light captures that as well.
You can see that, of course, it's kind of darker at the bottom there, but you just your eye pulls up a bit from there. Yeah. Really love it. It's a scale as well, and it makes the image. Thank you, and thanks for your answer. And just going to hand back to Louise again.
Often, I think when I look at other people's images, I can find qualities or characteristics that sort of define a style. I think all of us previously have said that we can't find our own, we don't see it in ourselves, but other people tend to sort of see it in our work. And I think sometimes I can look at Adele's work, but also your drone work, because I've got to know that a little bit more sort of over the past few weeks. And I can say, oh yes, that's a Max's photograph or Adele's, as opposed to other photographers who may even be at the same location. What in your eyes defines the characteristics of your work, your style, in your photos? I know they're very, very different to each other.
Yeah, see, I struggle with this because I can't see it. I see it in so many other photographers' work, but I don't see a coherent style through my work, for example. I think probably the only thing that I would maybe say is I like foreground. I love foreground. I look for anything with a little bit of interest, and usually my wider shots are packed with foreground interest. But I don't think there's a style. I quite like the mood and drama as opposed to, a glorious sunset or sunrise. And that's changed as well because when I was getting into photography, you would chase the sunrise and the sunset and sort of think, oh wow. But now I actually prefer the drama and the mood, the atmosphere in my images as opposed to the pretty colours. Don't get me wrong, still love a lovely, golden sunrise or sunset, but like all of last year, we couldn't wait for winter again. And we're already at that point where we can't wait for winter again.
But why? Was your choice of Lewis as opposed to Harris in part because you like the drama of things as opposed to the pretty? Because I think they got quite, for me, quite distinct flavours geographically, geologically as well.
I think Harris is, you picture postcard paradise, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's just breathtaking. But there's parts of Lewis that are equally as beautiful. I think the really good thing about Lewis, and we've said it so many times, is that you get the best of both worlds. You can find the rugged, rocky to the coast, but you've equally got those beaches and views that Harris has got.
Yeah.
And, there's not many people that come and take the time to explore Lewis. And, we were guilty of that ourselves, sort of coming across.
Yeah, we were.
We would head for Harris and stay there, But I think having that time on Lewis and discovering places, it's just been lovely. And we spend most of our time on Lewis as opposed to going to Harris, don't we?
We do.
So I think it was when we were looking at relocating, we looked all across the island. We looked at Lewis, we looked sort of at the central parts, and we looked at a couple of houses at Harris. But I think it's a bit more, for Stornoway, for amenities and things like that.
Yeah.
We're half an hour outside Stornoway. So we're half an hour enough to be sort of remote and not, by the shops and whatnot, but half an hour away if you need something in town. So we're made up with where we are. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Definitely.
So Max, do you feel you've got a particular style? I mean, actually, when you put your images together of a location, they are like the jigsaw pieces. They're cohesive. They work really well together, but they are so different.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I say, I've probably 18 months now, sort of been taking maybe a little bit more taking pictures with the drone, actual stills with the drone. It's hard. It's a hard one, really. I mean, I love to see from above and below. It's quite funny. I love the underwater camera, which we only got sort of last year, and then I love it from the air, whereas Adele loves it just
In
as
the
much.
middle.
So we have got the circle really, I suppose, of top, middle, and
I
bottom.
can see it in your work.
Oh, I can.
It's funny that you don't see it in your work, but I can see Max's work, that cohesion with the waves and what Max enjoys to photograph. You know, the lines of the shoot, the waves coming in, the light. I can see that in your work, but it's funny that you don't see it.
And you're saying exactly, Adele, what we've all said beforehand. It's that sometimes you guess, oh, I could tell that was your shot, and you think, crikey, I can tell Paul's shots because he does a crack in woodland and I'm rubbish at them. And Doug, you know, he really does kind of focus in on the historic monuments, and I can tell his stuff. It's kind of, I suppose, the passion's coming through as well. Yeah, thank you very much. That's quite interesting. I'm going to ponder on a couple of those responses there. Meanwhile, Dougie, go for it, lovely.
So we're looking here at, if I'm not mistaken, this is Bastinigay Beach in Harris. Is that right?
Yeah.
Looking across to North Harris. Funnily enough, last week we interviewed Nick Hansen, and one of his pictures was this exact same location. Funnily enough, you know, but he was kind of further back up the beach a wee bit. So it was quite a surprise when your word popped up. I thought, that looks familiar.
I think it was probably around a quarter of a second. That's usually my go-to for when the waves are sort of washing in and out, is around a quarter of a second anyway. That's my starting point.
And are you using filters, or was it dark enough to get away without them?
Yeah, so I think I seem to remember I had a 3-stop medium grad and a 3-stop ND. The sun was setting just to the left, and it was a really strange evening because it started off really golden, but then the cloud moved in, so we got this almost pinky, bluey, moody sunset go on. I mean, further round where the sun was setting, it was still slightly orange, but like I say, as the cloud moved in, we got this quite moody feel to the sky, and that's why I really like the image, because of that mood and that feel to it.
Yeah.
Got absolutely wet through because I was literally. It's a really difficult beach because it's shingle. So when the waves come in and sort of as they're going back out, everything moves under your feet, and it can catch you off guard a little bit. Because of the force of the waves. You know, we've been on this beach so many times, and sort of before we've even set our cameras up, we've watched for around 10, 15, 20 minutes just to see what it's doing, because, you know, you can think, oh, I'll be all right over there, you know, a bit nearer, and then a huge wave will just come in and you know, you'd have been taken out. So you've really got to be careful at this beach. But I do like to be in the thick of it at the same time. So it's quite difficult for being safe and getting the composition that you want, I suppose. I quite often end up with seaweed wrapped around my wellies at this beach, but it's fantastic. There's for such a small beach, there's so much interest and foreground to take advantage of when the waves are.
Thing is, this is one where if you get the tide just a bit too low, you just can't get the dynamic. I mean, when you just look at that, I'm just looking sort of just a third in there. You've got obviously a little ridge in the sand, and you've just got the beautifulness of it kind of up and over, and it's quite frightening at times when you're standing on that place. So for you to get that, I'm sitting there thinking, God, I need to be a bit more brave when I come up.
Like I say,
Pair of
you
waders,
just want
Louise.
to be really careful. And I think because we photographed that beach so many times now, you know, you sort of get a bit of an idea at high tide, but you know, when you get the waves that are ripping in, that's when you've got to be really careful. It's not too bad when it's gentle, but we've seen huge waves at that beach, and then we, like you say, we've seen it on a lower tide when it sort of isn't anything. It's still beautiful, but you know, you don't see it the same without the waves. So yeah, it's a fantastic little beach. It's probably, we would go to that beach or to Sealy Boss Beach every single time over Luscantire. you know, because you still get the beautiful hills and, you know, that
Yes,
interest
you can
in
see
the
them. Yeah.
but there's more interest in the foreground, and that sort of coming back to that first question about, you know, what defines you sort of as a
Yeah,
person
yeah.
is that foreground interest. So I can struggle a lot when there's nothing in the foreground. But quite often, you know, you get those beautiful patterns in the sands as well, which really help with foreground. So there's always something to photograph.
That's I'm staying 4 minutes from there because it's just a beautiful place to be.
Is it Taladamara?
Yes,
Yeah,
3
nice,
nights up there.
lovely.
I'm
Yeah,
anticipating rain, so I thought we could go into the cafe. Crikey, that's brilliant.
It is lovely. I do like you've got leading lines in the sky and obviously in the waves themselves. Is that wave just, is it going out or coming in? I mean, obviously the one in the back splashing is coming in,
yeah.
but it's
What I always try and do with these particular shots is I try and time it where a big wave's come in and it's washing back out whilst another one's coming in. It doesn't always work that way. And you know, it's all about that timing and patience really. And I, you know, on a night like this, when the waves are just fantastic, I can probably take 50 or 60 images and I'll pick maybe one or two that I actually like. So I try and time it, like I say, one's coming in and on its way back out as another one's coming in. And you get that sort of feel then all the way through the image. And it just adds a bit more detail, I think, around the rocks as the next one's coming in.
yeah. So if you're looking at a weather forecast, what would you look for in a forecast when you're going to do a shot like this?
The starting point's always what the tide's doing. Is it, you know, low, medium, or high tide? For a shot like this, it's just what is the tide doing basically, and then, you know, have we got any chance of a decent sunset? Very different than when we're looking at photographing just waves, because there's a whole host of other things that we're looking at. But for these types of shots, we would always try and go to that particular beach at high tide.
Cool. Right. I think you look at tide times and things like that just to find out what the waves are doing. Yeah.
So many
Cool.
apps.
Cool. So, other question. I mean, you said earlier on you took, what was it, 16 shots or something. Do you just, like, what separates this one from all the others that you took? Is it just the one you consider the best, or what?
Yeah, for me, I actually said that's my Bobby Dazzler from that evening, because it had everything. It had the mood, the light, and the colour drama, in the sky, and then that wave detail, you know, the wash as it goes back out with wave coming back in, because you know, you can you're anticipating what the waves are going to do. So, you know, you've got your little remote shutter and you're sort of watching the wave build and waiting to see how far up the first one's going to come before then the next one comes back in. So, you know, you can click away and it just doesn't quite do what you want it to, or it doesn't fill the whole frame, you know. So it depends on which way the wave comes in. And actually, I think it might have been the shot after this one was completely on the wonk and totally blurry, because, you know, the wash had moved my tripod as it went back out. So, you know, that's the other thing that you've got to take into account, that some of them might not be sharp depending on, you know, the
drag.
water movement. Yeah, the drag around the tripod a little bit.
Do you ram your tripod home into the beach there, or is it just?
Yeah, dig it in as much as possible. But I think it was the last time we were down there. There was the drag of the seaweed on its way back out was, it was really bad. It was dangerous, actually, probably. But that's what I'd look for, you know, and I might go through sort of 20 images and think, you know, the waves hasn't just filled the frame where I want it to, or the wave on its way back in isn't big enough, or, there's too much flat sea in between the rocks and the background. So, they're probably only minor as you flick through your images. But I'll tend to pick out maybe one or two that I like, and I just stick with them, and the others sort of get disregarded, which is a shame, really. But you probably do take a lot of images with this type of.
Right. Do you ever kind of grab one bit from one picture, one from another, do a composite, or do they all just
No, I
exactly as
always
they come?
like to, yeah, I always like to try and get my images right in camera, and I've tried bracketing sometimes, when even with your filters, you're still getting, the highlights blowing. But I don't know. I never seem to get on all right with it. I just much prefer being able to take one frame and everything be as I
Probably
want.
more satisfying at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's just the way that I've always done it, and it's the way that I feel most comfortable with, because I always have this little worry that what if it doesn't come together?
Yeah.
What if it, and I could have just taken it in one frame. So if I take a bit of this and a bit of that and then it doesn't come together, it's, you've not got the image, and it sort of doesn't feel, for me anyway. I know a lot of people bracket and, take a sky from the same evening and or light, different pieces of light across hills or what have you. But I just think, yeah, you're right. It's more satisfying when it's for me anyway, when it's in one frame.
Cracking image, that one.
A lovely, lovely shot. Yeah. So, we want to move on to the next one.
Beautiful.
So, Max, this is one of your pictures, I believe.
It is, and it's using the big girl camera.
The big girl's camera. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ground.
It's the Northern Lights. Obviously, is this still on Harris or Lewis?
Lewis, that's on our
right.
local beach.
Cool.
Just down the road. We looked out the kitchen. I think we'd let the dogs out, and we'd heard that the aurora. We checked on the app, and the aurora was around, but it was crazy aurora. That was last year, wasn't it? That. Yeah, crazy. There was a couple of weeks where it was quite active. Yeah, and you could see it almost like that with your eye. You could see the pink, you could see the green. You can normally see the green, or you can just see a little bit of green if it's a good one. Yeah. But you could see that colour as well, couldn't you? Never seen anything like it before. Yeah. The auroras we had for that 2-week period were absolutely staggering. This is the only word I could use for that. But to be able to see that with your naked eye, so we grabbed the cameras, didn't we, and just bombed it down to the nearest beach. But yeah, I love the reflection, and as I say, it's not a drone image. It's not my underwater camera. It was the 750, and it's nice to have been able to capture that with the 750.
Cool. And was it? I was going to ask a stupid question about a tripod. You would have used a tripod, presumably. Yeah.
Yes, because it was. How long was that one? I can't quite remember.
It's like 20 seconds.
Yes, about 22
20
seconds, I think, that one. So yeah, it was on the tripod.
And was there much in the way of post-processing going on it? Or is it just
not much post-processing?
Pretty much as it came out the camera.
No,
that was genuinely the colours, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you had them last week, didn't you? You had the aurora last week.
Yes.
Not jealous. But when you have captured them, do you find that you almost feel like you want to dial back the colour slightly because it feels so intense? Do you have any of that sort of pressure where you think, if I dial it back, then people won't say it's false?
You see, I don't. So let me just think about that now. So I don't mind what people think. I'm a big believer in, personally, it is how it is. So if that's how that looks, then that's how I'm happy to show that. And I know we've had some outrageous colours, and again, a bit like that, really. The fact that we've got that reflection in the water there. You could imagine some people thinking, I'm not quite sure about that. That is how it was. So that's how it was in the camera. That's how I'm going to show you guys, So
Good point.
Absolutely.
Good point.
We're not jealous at all, are we, guys?
No, we're not.
No, not in any way whatsoever.
We had Worthing last year twice. We had it in Worthing on the south coast of England, which was mad because everyone just would. And again, I missed the first one, but the second one, which was I think Octoberish, got that one. But when I was there, I felt when I was looking at it on my screen, I was thinking it can't have been that colour because we couldn't see it as much with the naked eye, and that was the issue. Down here, people were saying, well, it's not like that. You wouldn't have seen it like that. It's only through your cameras. And actually, to be fair, down here, we didn't have that beauty. We didn't have that intensity until you got your camera out. And there was a lot of dancing and blimey.
I think here, because, there's very little light pollution.
Yeah.
You do see it very differently. And, even just last week, sort of from the garden, you could see the arc sort of forming on the horizon, and then the structures and the pillars sort of just coming off it. But when it got to, because it went to a major alert, it went to a major alert last week, and when it was at that point, you could clearly see the reds and the pinks and the muted greens. And when we was on Harris, in the van, actually, when we was over on holiday, you could actually see it just moving, and never ever seen that before. And there's just something about the night skies here, I think, that are just, mesmerising.
Yeah.
Glendale.
You would have to see it like that to believe it. I totally understand that, because
definitely.
if I'd have seen a photograph like that, I might have been one of them people that think, oh, well, what's been done to that then? A little bit of cooking going on there. You have to physically, you would get it if you physically saw it.
Yeah.
Did
you take many shots, or was it just that one and then away again?
No, I took loads.
Sure.
Because it was moving. It was getting brighter. The greens were getting brighter. But I think that I prefer that one because of the vividness of the pink to the left, the red to the left.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd seen that, and it was quite low. Whereas you normally always, for the ones other than last May, you tend to see the green, and then the colours are a little bit higher. But that was as low as the green on that night. It was just crazy.
What I like about the technical part of this, well, how do you find the balance between technical skill and artistic vision in your work? Because there's a lot going here as technical as well as artistic vision.
Well, it's a good question, actually, because that particular day was quite frantic. The winds. So usually, so we head up to this location near enough every time there's high winds, because it's fantastic. And on this particular day, so normally you get the winds blowing in the opposite direction, so away from shore, so that you get the spray coming back off the waves. And on this particular day, the winds were blowing towards the shore.
Okay.
So this little harbour here, so what was happening basically was that the waves were coming in, hitting the harbour wall on the left-hand side, bouncing it over the wall, and then as it hit and blew back up, the wind was taking it. It was actually a very fast shutter speed. I can't remember exactly what shutter speed I was on. It was maybe, I don't know, 1/500th of a second or something like that. But because the winds were literally that forceful, that powerful,
the spray,
it was just a spray. So as it came over, bounced, and then went back up, the spray that had bounced back up was just being sort of floated away by the winds. So you've got that really soft feel spray in the middle, with then sort of the detail where it's come over the wall and down the steps. We wouldn't have got these photographs hadn't we found a little hidey hole.
Nice, that's cozy.
Exactly, because I mean, at some point, so in this little viewpoint that we'd found, I don't know what it was, but just sort of further back, there's like a little shelter with a window, not glass window, it's sort of straight out, but the waves are actually coming over the top of that, and straight in front of the window at times.
Yeah.
So it was quite frantic. It actually felt
it looks that.
You were in the middle of the sea when the waves were coming over. But I think it's coming back to that reacting to what the conditions are doing. So you know, when the waves are, you know, quite forceful, quite powerful, I suppose you know you need a faster shutter speed, but then I have done quite a lot of slower shutter speeds with waves as well, just to experiment and see what works well and you know, what I like with the waves. But these were actually shot handheld, literally just poking out the window, taking a bit of shelter. But it was a fantastic day, and it just carried on, carried on and carried on. And every wave that came over was either bigger or, you know, came across the pier quite a bit more, the little harbour wall, sorry. And we actually went away to a different location and came back because it was just immense. It was just one of those days that, you know, you could have been out for hours and taken, you know, so many different types of images.
There's so much in this image, and it's you know, you stay in it for hours, looking at the detail. There's so much detail in it. Of course, it's you know, you mentioned the fast shutter speed that's going to capture everything almost. And you know, when it comes to the sea spray, that's a lovely soft kind of movement of the water itself, but the sea spray makes it as well. So you've got different types of aspects of photography here almost. It's really quite interesting in so many ways. But yeah, love it. I'm given to think that the whole sky is actually dark. It's just a spray of the waves, I gather.
There was one from that day actually that almost looked like the sky and the spray were just completely merged. You couldn't see the difference between the two before the dark sky moved in. And it's a bit ethereal, isn't it, because of that? But I quite
surreal,
like the fact that this one's a bit more defined between the sky and the waves. The spray.
I'm glad I've got the chance to speak about this image because it's a cracking shot.
Yeah, so that's a lovely picture, ladies.
Moving swiftly on. So, ladies, obviously, when you are kind of on your creative journey, many people will offer you some advice. Sometimes it's always about lenses and kit like that, and that's not the stuff that ever stays with me. What's the bit of advice that you individually or collectively were given when you were a little bit earlier on in your journey becoming a photographer that actually resonates with you today?
It's a really difficult question, I think, because I sort of taught myself with photography through watching people on YouTube and then heading out to practice. And literally, I think I did maybe a one day workshop. And other than that, it's just been practicing and teaching myself. So I don't know that there's any sort of in particular piece of advice that sticks out for me from another photographer. I think it can be easy, I think, to get caught up in this is a good piece of advice or, you know, this is something you should do, because I think when you're learning photography yourself and you make a mistake or you think, actually, this works for me, you know, that I think that's all what I found for myself is that that's my own best advice. You know, I think you can be frustrated initially, and it's quite easy. I think when we were planning within an inch of our lives to go away with the cameras and enjoy some photography, travelling from, you know, East Lancashire to the Highlands of Scotland and further, you could get really disappointed that you know, it rained all week or it didn't do what you wanted it to do. And I think probably the not getting frustrated, I think, is probably advice that I would say to other people. You know, my niece is just learning photography. We just sent a camera over for her last week with a lens, and we was heading out yesterday for the first time with the camera, and it's my words to her were, don't get frustrated. You know, if the camera's not doing something that you want it to do, either put it into auto or one of the automatic modes and just enjoy the experience. And I think that was something initially that I didn't do because I was so hung up on coming away with a good image that I probably didn't enjoy the experience as much as I should have done. But I'm probably going off on a tangent a little bit, but I'm probably trying to talk about my own advice to myself.
I was going to say, it's almost like you're talking to
If that makes sense.
a sort of less experienced photographer, or one who's just a little bit earlier in their journey, or who's experiencing that frustration where you plateau and think, why can't I get something sorted?
And I think, you know, when you're learning, and again, I did the same, you know, I'd look at photography magazines, I'd look at images online, and you think, you compare your work and you think, why can't I get images like that? Why is my work not like that? But I think I was probably quite consumed with that initially, listening to podcasts and various different people's, and all this input comes in, and I sort of think that you can confuse yourself a little bit with what you should or shouldn't be doing, or what works for them might not work for you.
Yeah.
We sort of, I had the point where I just thought, right, I'm going to come away from the, you know, listening to podcasts and YouTube, and I'm just going to go out and enjoy what I'm doing. And I've stuck with that. And I think probably, I don't know who it was or where it come from, and I think probably a lot of photographers say the same thing about shooting for yourself. And I think that's probably the best advice that I've heard. And I've probably gone round in a massive circle.
But it's not easy, because if you think about it, as you say, there is so much advice out there. And there is that tension between shooting for yourself and being authentic. For me, it's about trying to be authentic, and you know, try to be authentic whilst still having in mind an audience or whatever. Because obviously, if you're doing YouTube, or you're on social media elsewhere, but let's do the YouTube bit. Well, you feel like you're letting people down if you've just got a pile of pants images, and sometimes you go to a place and nothing works and everything fails, and you just think you've just lost your heart, and you feel like you've got to create something out of nothing sometimes.
100%. And you know, when we moved over here, we sort of took a massive break initially from YouTube. And I felt that my photography improved. It massively improved because I wasn't conscious of the image, if that makes sense, and distracted by chatting to camera. I mean, we picked up YouTube again towards the back end of last year, and we're again on a bit of a break from it, because going back into YouTube, we were sort of saying that we didn't want to commit to a weekly schedule, and we ended up doing that. we did end up doing that. So we're sort of taking a bit of a break, and we're coming into our busy sort of period now anyway, with summer and the season starting and whatnot. But YouTube for me is a bit of a double-edged sword. For bit. You know, you go somewhere with the expectations, or, you know, thinking, you know, this will be fantastic, and like you say, and then it's not, and then you come away thinking, well, I'm not happy with the images, but we've got the footage, and we've made the video, and should I put it out? Shouldn't I put it out? And I think that can have a bit of you know, a negative effect, rather than the freedom of, I'm just going to try this, and it don't matter because it's not going on YouTube. You know, I can just try it, and if I like the images, great. We'll go out and try that again, or you know. So, but equally, I think, you know, there's been so many people that have contacted us since we restarted YouTube again and said, so nice to see you back, and you know, it's that positive example and influence for other women in photography, you know, to be on YouTube. So it's not, we're not on a huge break. I think it'll just be a case of, you know, coming into the settled conditions and this busy sort of period for us now, that we'll just put a video out when it's right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. If we want to do one and put one out, then we will. If we, you know, if everything comes together, then we'll put one out.
Yeah. Because I first started kind of following you, if I say this cautiously, when you had a little difficulty with an overzealous follower.
Well,
quite some time. Somebody had found out you were going to certain locations and were trying to meet you there quite a lot, and that was one of the first times I remember thinking, I need to be quite aware of my safety. You taught me, without knowing it, you kind of taught me a bit of a a lesson. I thought, oh, I need to be very much not going, I'm going here next week, because then otherwise suddenly people turn up and go, hello, Louise. And you think, oh, crikey, which is lovely, but a little bit sort of cautious in that one here. Before we sort of wrap things up, Liz, I've got to just thinking about, you've had quite a terrific year and a half, 2 years with your world domination. And what I was just wondering was, what does the next year hold for you, creatively, photographically? What have you set yourself any goals that you'd like to achieve?
We've got a working list, and I think we're relaxed with it, but we're on top of it at the same time, and I think that's taken a while to get to that point, because I think of our corporate jobs before. If you had a to-do list, it needed to be done yesterday, not in a week's time. So we've sort of adjusted a little bit, and we have a working to-do list, and we write things in the diary and sort of have a bit of an idea as to when we want to do things. I think this year we've actually got quite a good few one-to-ones booked in, which is fantastic. We did our first one-to-one of the season, was it last week or the week before, with a lovely guy, Archie, and met his wife, and it was just, we went to Luskintyre and spent 3 or 4 hours. Just the light was terrible, but to actually sort of spend that time with someone and really, get them excited about the photography and happy with the images they were taking was just fantastic. So we've got quite a lot of one-to-ones booked in. We're sort of working on a fine art print range as well for this year, and a complete revamp of the online sort of shop side of things. But it's gonna be a big job, I think, really, to get that exactly how we want it. We talked about an exhibition, but I think the thing is there's such a creative community. And there's a lot of community centres and hubs, but they get booked up so quickly because there's so many people wanting to display the work. So it might be something more for next year. What else have we got going on? We did start the Inspired by the Islands project, which we were hoping to work towards sort of but March was such a busy month with the photography show and a few other things when we got back, that sort of had to take a little bit of a back burner, and that's not something that we wanted to do. So we need to maybe get picked back up.
Absolutely.
But the Women in Seascape. So we've got the Women in Seascape community on Instagram.
I'm a follower and a part of
it. But we've got the first webinar coming up for that.
Nice.
How to achieve the perfect print. So that's coming up in a few weeks. It's completely free to register. It's about giving back to the community as opposed to, trying to make some money from that. Nigel Thomas has given his time for free, which is just
nice.
Lovely. So great.
Lovely man.
Such a nice guy. So that there's quite a few things. I think at the minute we're just getting ready for the season, and then we'll sort of go from there. And we're just open to whatever comes up.
Yeah, we certainly are.
The Women in Seascape thing, I must just let you know this. I belong to quite a number of groups, and I think partly because it has a very, very defined parameters. I have found that to be one of the most inspiring groups that I've been in, because you have got some really different styles coming in, and sometimes they're quite familiar places, and I've never even thought about doing that style in that area. So I have to say thank you for doing that, because I find that at the moment one of my top inspirations, just for getting things together and just making me think differently. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Crack on.
Nice to hear. Because Seascape is such a versatile genre of photography. You like you say, you could put 2 photographers on the beach and they come away with completely images, which is nice, and it's nice that interaction is there from the community, back and forth. So it's lovely.
Nice. Ladies, we've taken your time, but I'd like to say to you, I've really, really enjoyed talking to you tonight. In which case, I will say, ladies, it's been a flipping joy.
It's been good. Yeah.
And thank you for the inspiration for all of us. I mean, I'm really excited I get anywhere north of the Gap. So coming up to there and coming up to where these beautiful people live as well is just very exciting. Have a cracking week. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of your images. I'm very much looking forward to see all of them as when we watch this back and it goes out. Thank you so very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully see you soon.
Yeah.
This is a first of a new series that we are doing for you. Tonight, we are joined by Irish photographer Darren J. Spoonley.
They've got the easiest job in the world because all they have to say is cloudy, chance of rain.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, we welcome Nick Hansen, a multi-award-winning photographer based in the Isle of Skye.
So for me, if I'm answering this correctly, I'm a planner. I like to plan my photography shoots.